The discovery of old bones has been telling us for years things that we may have never known about our history without their discovery. From skulls of our ancient ancestors from millions of years ago, to unusual skulls found belonging to someone from 300 years ago. On today's list, I'll be covering some of the strangest skulls that have ever been discovered. In our number 10 spot today, we have the Sarmatian skull. This skull was located by archaeologists in Crimea and was immediately dubbed an alien because of its unusual elongated shape. The skull actually belonged to a 1.5-year-old boy, and scientists were able to link him to the Sarmatians, who have a history of practicing cranial alterations. The Sarmatians were an Iranian confederation that existed in the classical antiquity from around 5th century BC to 4th century AD. Cranial alterations have actually popped up quite a bit throughout history and always start from birth, since that is when the head and skull are soft enough for reshaping. The reason why has changed. Sometimes it is an aesthetic thing, but there is also a belief that the brain would hold a certain type of thoughts after alteration. As cool and interesting as it is to look back on these old practices, I definitely think it's best that we leave our head shapes alone, because the thought of changing it around really freaks me out. In our number 9 spot today, we have Tumai. This skull was found in 2001 in northern Chad and was named Tumai, which means hope of life in English. This skull was an unbelievable find because it challenged some things that we had previously thought we knew about our ancestors. Tumai is somewhere from 6 to 7 million years old, and the weight that the skull is and where the spine would exit and how it would be positioned showed that Tumai would have walked on 2 feet. This new find suggested that we evolved into bipedal animals at least 1 million years sooner than we used to believe, so it was a huge find for scientists. In our number 8 spot today, we have an Australopithecus skull. This one is another one that is pretty amazing, you guys. A few years ago, a skull was found in Ethiopia that belonged to a human ancestor that lived 3.8 million years ago, and that skull was in nearly complete condition. They originally found the upper jaw and then were able to locate the rest of the pieces over the next 16 hours. This skull was from an ancestor known as Australopithecus anemesis, who had very large faces and protruding cheekbones. This is when our ancestors were starting to get more human-like faces. It is just so crazy to see this skull and know how long it has been on this planet for. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Tibetan skull. This skull was actually found by researchers in an antique shop in Venice. This skull has been placed as being around 300 years old, so at first it appears like a fairly normal skull like what we're used to seeing, but there have been a ton of amazing carvings done on the skull. It is thought that this skull or the designs might have some sort of religious significance. I was wondering how and why the antique shop would have this skull, and as it turns out, a man sold it to them, but that man received it from an ancestor who was like a doctor traveling throughout Asia. The doctor had once treated a head monk at a Buddhist monastery in Tibet, and this skull was one of the things he was given. There are speculations as to what the carvings mean, but none have been confirmed. In our number 6 spot today, we have a skull with bullet holes. If someone told you they found a skull with bullet holes today, it might be strange and a little sad, but nothing super shocking. But when researchers found this skull that dates back to the prehistoric era with a bullet hole in it, that was definitely something to talk about. This skull was found in a limestone cave in Zambia almost a century ago. The skull dates back from 125,000 years to 300,000 years, and the bullet hole that was found have absolutely stumped researchers. Researchers were even more confused when they found the skull of an auroch, which is a type of cattle that has been extinct, with the same type of bullet hole. Maybe there was some sort of extremely early gun sort of invention that we don't know about. I hope maybe one day we'll be able to solve this mystery. In our number 5 spot today, we have this elongated alien skull. While searching in Mexico, archaeologists found 13 skulls that all resembled what could honestly be alien skulls. The skulls were from somewhere between 945 and 1308 AD. Scientists, of course, had to do more research as to what was going on with these skulls and their weird elongated shape, but they discovered that they were really human skulls. Unfortunately for my curiosity, they don't really know why these skulls were formed into this shape. Perhaps it was something like number 10 on this list. If it was just one, I feel like I could let it slide, but 13 at the same time, I feel like I need to know more. Some archaeologists believe that it had something to do with some sort of ritual perhaps, but it is likely that we may never know for sure. In our number 4 spot today, we have this 4,000-year-old skull. In 2009, researchers found a skull that was 4,000 years old. Definitely not as old as some of the other skulls on this list, but what is unique and kind of interesting about it is that this skull had signs that whoever it belonged to had leprosy. This is the oldest record of the disease, and while it isn't a huge threat anymore to most of the world, it is still incredibly misunderstood. To think that something has been around for that long and we really don't have a lot of information on it is kind of crazy, but I guess when you really think about it, that's like the Marianas Trench of skulls. In our number 3 spot today, we have this tiny skull. This skull was found in an ancient Peruvian cemetery along with others, but this one definitely stood out. The other ones that were found were totally normal, but this cannot be a human skull. Scientists have speculated that it may be the skull of an ancient Peruvian dog because the Chincha culture of the area had domesticated dogs. I definitely feel like the dog theory is the best guess, but this skull certainly is very, very strange and quite creepy. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Vampire of Venice. This skull belonged to a woman from the 16th century, and its discovery showed that she was considered a vampire. This skull was found with a large stone inside of its mouth, which was an exorcism technique used on suspected vampires so that their jaw would break and they would be unable to bite any victims. Researchers were unable to tell exactly what made this person be accused of being a vampire, but something as small and normal as living for a long time would be enough to convince people. And by a long time, I mean anywhere over 60 years old. In our number 1 spot today, we have this demonic skull. I think this might be the creepiest skull we have on this list, you guys. This skull was absolutely bizarre and is reported as not being like anything that is known to man. These skulls were found near the briefcase of a secretive German institute from World War II. Heinrich Himmler set out to find evidence that the Aryan race had once ruled the entire globe, but of course couldn't find any evidence of that because it didn't happen, and suddenly his research turned more occult and paranormal, as well as him beginning to study UFOs. This has led there to be speculations that perhaps aliens really did make contact at this time, and that these are alien remains. Others speculate that they summoned a demon and these are demon remains. Whatever happened is obviously extremely unclear, but this skull is both bizarre and has absolutely stumped researchers everywhere. Alright guys, that is our list for today. Now I'm going to be doing a comment shout out. The comments are coming from my video, Top 10 Dark Lost Tapes Found on the Internet. Part 2. Candy Dewey says, I'll come back later and watch this. I'm being a baby right now. Honestly, I respect that. You gotta do it on your time when you feel ready, because if you don't want to do it before bed, I totally understand that. Maybe like a little morning creepy session? I don't know. You know, do what fits your schedule. I just appreciate you watching and commenting on the video. Marcus Sanders says, Olivia, you're not the only one that finds this creepy. That is so good to hear, because I feel like sometimes when I'm making those videos for you guys, I'm like, am I going crazy because I get so creeped out finding the videos? And I'm like, I want you guys to be creeped out too, because that's the whole point. But maybe my creepiness doesn't match your creepiness, so I'm glad that me and Marcus, we're on the same wavelength. I appreciate that. Satori80SS says, I agree with Olivia about all of this except for metamorphosis. I think it's very creative and I like it a lot. I'm glad she brought it to my attention. That's super cool. Honestly, that's the next best thing other than being creeped out, is being interested and enjoying it. I'm really glad to hear that. I think that that's amazing, and if you know what that means, well, like what that film was supposed to mean, what the point of it was, please let me know, because it was kind of interesting, but it also freaked me out, you know? So maybe you can give me some insight to see it the way that you do, which I would appreciate. Princess Kittens said, Olivia's trying to curse us because we caused Lindsay to get cursed. Did you guys curse Lindsay? Because we're not in the office, I haven't seen her in a while. You guys, right after I'm finished this, I need to go and text Lindsay right now to make sure that she is okay and not cursed. What did you guys do? Crazies. That's it, guys. That is all the comments that I'm shouting out on today's video. Thank you for watching. I've been your host, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.